Okay, why don't we get started? Welcome everyone to Cancer Center Grand Rounds. I'm Roy Herbst, and I'm broadcasting here with Paula Pike from the North Haven Care Center, which is actually the home of the main campus Thoracic Oncology right now. And today's going to be a very special presentation because I think there'll be something for everyone, all the way from the clinic to the lab and back. And we're going to actually have a relatively large panel where we're going to hear from some of the members of the Thoracic Center and get their thoughts. And there's also some exciting breaking news on lung cancer for anyone who has an app. They've probably seen the articles in the Times and other CNN just in the last hour. So we knew about that, so we're going to talk about that. So welcome everyone. I'm going to introduce the panel at the end, but I'm going to show a few slides just to get us warmed up.
Share on the right, and then hit your PowerPoint at the very bottom. Yep. And then big screen. Yep.
So really excited to be here, and I'm really just here. I'm the conductor of an amazing orchestra of wonderful people that really make up the program that you're going to hear about today. That's been in existence for some time. We're just going to try to expand it out to even more places with the same expertise, caring, quality that we've come to expect. So I'm going to talk about the lung cancer clinical care and research program, and I'm going to introduce the Thoracic Disease Center, something many of you have heard about in recent days. These are my disclosures. So we're talking about lung cancer, and lung cancer has an amazing burden worldwide, with over 2 million cases worldwide and 1.76 million deaths. Still the #1 cause of cancer death. Perhaps more breast cancer or prostate cancer are diagnosed, skin cancer for screening. But lung cancer still in the US, you can see 135,000 plus deaths. Despite all the improvements you're going to hear about today, most of lung cancer, 84% is non-small cell, 15% is small cell. The majority of the non-small cell is adenocarcinoma, and more than half presents already metastatic, and that makes it even more difficult to treat. And of course, tobacco, and we're going to talk about screening in a moment, the single largest preventable cause, leading to 30% of all cancer deaths. There are about 20 cancers that you can track back to tobacco. But in those who are non-smokers, especially in lung cancer, you can see the potentially actionable mutations for which we now have drugs, either in trial or, for the most part, as approved agents. What a change from 15, 20 years ago. And there are even data now for KRAS-targeted drugs. We'll talk a little bit about that. For those who have smoked, the adenocarcinoma is about 12% now have a target. Well, the mortality for this disease is really improving. And you can see that here, both for men and for women. This is the data from the American Cancer Society. And the rate of lung cancer, the incidence is decreasing by 2.6% a year, and the mortality by 4.3% in men, and in women, 1.2% incidence and 3.1% mortality. This is the result, I would contest, of better prevention, primary prevention, not smoking. Secondary prevention, the CAT scanning, we'll talk about that, but also some of the therapies, some of them that had their origins here with science and studies at Yale. Well, here's the history of the Thoracic Oncology program, and I'm a relative newcomer to some of the group that's been here. Look in the bottom left, and Lynn Tanui really had the idea for this, working with Lynn Wilson, and my friend and many of yours, the late John Murin. And this is actually Graham Hammond. So he was a great surgeon, but he was not a thoracic only surgeon. He did cardiac disease as well. So Lynn got some money and had the idea to recruit a thoracic surgery specialist and build a section of thoracic surgery. And of course, she recruited Frank, and that happened. And you can see the group here. Then you can see the TIP program that we've come to know and love, John Pochowski and the team that can do interventional techniques, a lung biorepository. Actually, Lynn set that up with Frank. Susan Main, now one of the ranking members of the FDA, when Susan was here working with Bonnie Gould Rothberg, David Rim, and Kurt Schauper. If any of the scientists in the audience need tissue, we have it. Then I came around 2011, about 10 years ago, actually exactly 10 years ago today. And we worked very hard to even build further, and we developed the Yale Spore in Lung Cancer, a P50. The lung nodule screening program is a robust and going strong. And here's a recent retreat about 2 years ago that Dan Baffa organized, and you can see the numbers of people that are involved. This is truly a team effort. And here you can see a bit of the evolution, and people have aged quite gracefully, I think. So here's 2004, at the very origin. Scott had just come. He's done an amazing job. He came to work with John. John passed away in his first months, but Scott took on the helm, and he's going to join me in a second. He's down seeing a patient, and he'll tell you about his early work in immunotherapy. Then, of course, here's the group in 2008, already quite robust. Building. There's Dr. Decker. Then in 2012, this is the first retreat that I helped organize with Lynn and Frank, and this was over there at the up on Prospect Street. And then here's our more recent group. Well, what I really want to talk to you about is multimodality care and how multimodality care makes a difference. And that's why we're even working harder now to promote the Thoracic Center. So what you can see is, there are so many aspects of multimodality care, including screening, pulmonologists, radiologists, surgeons, medical oncologists, social workers, of course, the clinic administration, the wonderful nursing and support staff. It really is a village, and we have it all here. I can tell you, having worked at many great hospitals over the years, it's all here. Expert care at all sites, common practice patterns. We'll do even more of that. Protocols available in all disciplines at all sites, and quality and compassionate care. And we're just going to do more of that with this new iteration of the Thoracic Center. Now, thoracic research, and I've given grand rounds, my team have given grand rounds. I just want to introduce that research can be basic in the lab. We have tons of that at Yale. It's the best in the world. Translational, the lab to the clinic. I think that's the special sauce, being able to take that back and forth, of course, to the clinic and clinical studies, and not to forget outcomes in the community. We have proteomics, we have genomics, but right now the key is communityomics. We've got to get out to the community. We live in New Haven. We've got to get out to the New Haven corridor. We've got to get out to Trumbull, to Bridgeport, up north. We have to do all that. So what are some major accomplishments? Again, just a few. Immunotherapy, Scott's going to hopefully arrive soon and tell us about this. Before I even knew Scott or knew about Yale, I heard about immunotherapy happening here with Mario Snoll and Harriet Kluger, Scott taking over. The first or second patient ever treated with lung cancer on a PD-1 inhibitor here at Yale. This woman, 3 times refractory to lung cancer, squamous cell disease, prognosis here would have been months, just saw her a couple of months ago, 10 plus years, amazing. This is the curve. This is from Scott's first study. He published this. It's one of the more cited papers last year or 2 years ago in JCO. Look at the tail of this curve. Now we, of course, want to do better. And for anyone watching this and you're thinking, of course we have to do better. But 5-year overall actual survival, look how mature this is, 16%. This is the tail of the curve. It's simply transformational. We have innovation. This is an investigator-initiated trial. Very proud of this. This was a collaboration between the melanoma group. They have a spore too, led by Harriet Kluger, Marcus, part of that spore as well, but this was a while back. Sarah Goldberg and Veronica Chang, of course, who is a neurosurgeon who does the gamma knife. Here's a patient with brain mets with lung cancer who is going to be a candidate for immunotherapy. We could have radiated the brain here, and 2 weeks of radiation would have probably resulted in some cognitive impairment. But instead, this patient was treated with immunotherapy. And in this very first study, it was shown that patients actually respond in the brain. And this actually was before any of the clinical trials were allowing this, and anyone was doing this in clinical practice. Innovative, and the correlative studies from this, maybe Kurt will tell us a bit about that when we call on him. And papers, again, not meant to be in detail. There were so many papers. One of the things we're going to do as part of this new disease center is keep a full log and quantify all these, but we've published, it builds the scientific literature, it helps get this to other places, it builds our reputation. Basic science. I mentioned we have amazing basic science. Just one of our SPORE projects, Project 2, Katie and Sarah both here, working with Mark Lemon from the Cancer Biology Institute. Mechanistic approaches to counter TKI resistance in EGFR mutant lung cancer. So here's the team. I think this is in the library in the brain room, working to develop their methods to counter EGFR resistance. Publishing well, changing the field. We had the lung spore retreat here a few years ago that Katie ran with Christine Lovely from Vanderbilt. This is what we need to do more of. We're continuing to bring the best science to bear on this disease. And then what about translational science? This is the area where I have put most of my time, but we built a lung spore. It took us a few years, but in 2015, we became only the third lung spore. Here we are, celebrating, and then we renewed it on our very first try in 2020. Why? Because we had impact in smoking cessation, in immunotherapy, in targeting EGFR resistance, and we continue to go strong. This is our current SPORE iteration. We have projects right now, and you'll hear about this, new targets for immunotherapy. Everyone in the world is using Li Ping's first discovery. Now we're working on one of his others. We're working on brain metastases with Don Wen, a wonderful addition to this team. Katie and her team, as I mentioned, Sarah and Mark, working on EGFR pathway resistance, and we're continuing to look at prevention with smoking. This trial, Ben Toll and Lisa Fukushida and others, this trial, Brenda and others, is about to unveil its results. And again, publishing well in high-profile journals. These drugs, and this is just a list I could think of, the last night when I was making the slide with Dr. Joe, who helped me with these slides, you can see all these drugs, their first uses, how to use them, the mechanism, the biopsy studies, all really with some origins here at Yale Cancer Center. Very proud of that. People could come here. I still recall with atezolizumab, 9 years ago, a patient coming from New York because they couldn't get immunotherapy in New York. They're getting it here at Yale. I'd like to see us do more of that with the next generation of either targeted therapies or immunotherapies, and with surgical techniques and with other types of treatments. We have a DART, a disease-aligned research team. This is a picture from our last week's meeting. Some of the leaders will be on there. I guess I must have taken a phone call in the middle of the call, and they caught me. You never know when you're on the Zoom, but an amazing, amazing group of people. These are the people that make it happen. I know many of them are watching, and I appreciate their work so much, and really fantastic. And our leaders, Jennifer Pope and Kira Pavlik, are just amazing team. Our accruals. These are the accruals without the phase 1 patients, because a lot of lung patients go to phase 1, but this has been pretty decent. I would like to see this go higher. How are we going to make this higher? By bringing more patients here and by having more trials and being more efficient. I'm not a skier. If I was a skier, this would be the biggest slope I'd ever want to go on. And I got to tell you, we got to fix this. A little bit of a downturn last year. Some of this is COVID. Some of this is, the current environment, but we're going to bring this up. And this is where our tissue samples come from. This is our innovation. This is how we help more patients. But our trials are very nicely divided, very proud of this. 40% or so of our accruals are at the care centers. The lung team really is already multidisciplinary and already working between the care centers. And you can see while 37.8% are industry, we're very active in the NCTN with leadership in the SWOG. Several of the group have leadership committees, leadership positions in the lung committee. Dr. Decker has leadership, myself and several others, Dr. Paletti. And you can see investigator-initiated trials about 10%. We're going to do even more of those for the future. This just opened. I think Scott's probably downstairs putting someone on. So this is an investigator-initiated trial with the drug Cyclic-15. What does it mean, investigator-initiated? Yale holds the IND. Yale is fully responsible for this trial. We're getting the drug from NextCure, a company that Li Ping has been involved with, and we're getting the and where the phase 1 studies were initially run, and we're getting the pembrolizumab from Merck. But we're pulling it all together. We're getting the biopsies. The biopsies will be picked up in the clinic by one of our team. They'll go to David's lab, they'll go to Kurt's lab, they'll go to Li Ping's lab. This is how science has to be done. The best treatments and then understanding the mechanism, all that happening through the system. Just to finish up, we have a wonderful program in small cell lung cancer. This is led by Ann Cheng. Small cell is a community type disease. I think it's one of the reasons why, and a smoking related disease too, why we have so much care center accrual, because some of her innovation with the care centers in the small cell program. And then lung cancer screening, I'm going to let Lynn talk in a bit, but this has just been a phenomenal labor of love from Lynn and the team to get screening at multiple sites. And again, it couldn't be more timely, because Lynn's going to tell us a little bit about how screening is not only being done, but it's being expanded. Community outreach and engagement, I mentioned that. Our lung map trial, here I am with Dr. Joe talking to the cultural ambassadors. The way you get trials out to the community is you go to the community, you talk on the radio programs, you go to the churches. We're doing that. We're donating masks, we're creating navigators. We're going to do more of this. Now we have a network. I mentioned I'm here 10 years ago, a little bit more than 9 years ago. We brought in the first group, MOH, 21 doctors. Now we have 15 sites where care can be delivered. I believe this is Westerly, Rhode Island. It'd be nice to have a boat, huh? So look at all these sites that we have, and we need to now expand and deliver multimodality care, innovative care, protocol-driven care, or at least the best standard of care at all these sites. We're doing that, but we're going to do it even better as we expand. So Kevin Vest, who I've known since I got here, who's done so much for this endeavor, has spoken to this group before about the disease centers, pulling together things into a clinical research and education component, and inclusivity, the cogs of the wheel all working together. I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, except to say thank you, Kevin, because you gave us the resources and the stimulus to take lung cancer to this level. So now we have our cabinet. And by the way, this is no way to mean that if you're not listed on the cabinet, you're not critical. There are going to be work streams, there are going to be subgroups, but this is just the start as we launch this. I've agreed, I have plenty else to do, but I'm passionate about this, I think, as you all know, and I can work all the different areas. I'm going to be the coordinator for now, and I'm starting out as a coordinator, but Dan Baffa remains the clinical director. He's done an amazing job with this. Scott Jettinger is our chief of thoracic medical oncology. Sarah Goldberg will be the research director, and Katie Paletti, the scientific director. They'll each speak, working very closely with Kevin and with administrative staff. And this cabinet is meant to represent different disciplines, but also different centers, like Justin's at Greenwich, Vinny is at Bridgeport, and I'm going to introduce them all in just one moment. So here's our panel. I did what I wanted to do, 20 minutes. I've invited all this group to be here today. It's a new way to do grand rounds, but having been on most of the grand rounds the last year, I missed the interactive format. I think it would be interesting I want to see plenty of questions. I'm going to ask each of these panelists to be careful with their time, but I'm going to ask them, one, to introduce themselves, two, to tell us what they do, and then tell us a little bit of something that's really exciting in your area, and perhaps how you think we can bring that to the disease center, thoracic disease center throughout Connecticut. So with that, I think I'll stop. I just want to acknowledge we have so much support from the team, but also philanthropy. This is all philanthropy that comes to lung cancer. More on the way, I hope, and we have peer-reviewed funding as well. So let me see if Lynn is on the line. Lynn's not here yet, so I have to sort of do a Bayesian approach here. So let me stop sharing, and I'm going to pull the screen up, and let me ask the panel members to unmute and welcome you all. And thanks for being here. I guess maybe the first word, I'd like to introduce Dan Baffa, who's the clinical director. And Dan, Lynn's about to be here, and I want to save the screening discussion for her. But can you just introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about some of the innovations in surgery and why multimodality care is so important.
Sure. Thanks, Roy. For those of you who don't know, I'm one of the thoracic surgeons, and there have been a number of innovations in surgery that really tie to care delivery in general. That one of our research interests in the Division of Thoracic Surgery has been networks and how networks can function better to provide care throughout the network. We've really identified a number of opportunities where satellites are not performing at the same levels as the main campus, and we believe we've discovered several ways to improve that. You know, the things I've served as the clinical director of TOP, and I think that moving into the next chapter is how do we bring our multidisciplinary care model to other centers across the network, and I really try to image what does care feel like across the network. You know, and it really just comes down to care really needs to feel like it's connected, so that all of our centers are connected and all of our clinicians are connected. Care has to feel navigated, and we've totally revamped our entire nursing model so that we now have practice nurses. We've essentially doubled the number of practice nurses across the thoracic oncology program. And so that really there's going to be somebody holding your hand that's identifiable throughout your entire cancer journey. And when there's a handoff across modalities, it'll be to somebody who's on that team. And finally, it's got to be expert care. And, you know, there's experts in clinical trials, there's experts in complex surgery. We need to be experts. We need to have the expertise to manage the whole package, not just the tough parts, but the general well-being. And so we're trying to refine what it feels like to be a patient in the thoracic oncology program throughout the entire journey. So
thanks, Dan. What are some of the innovations? We hear about robotic surgery, VATS surgery, different techniques. Are we using that throughout our system?
yeah, they actually, all of the surgeons do minimally invasive surgery. Right now, 3 of the 6, we're going to 7 in July. 3 of the 6 do robotics, but hopefully by December or January of next year, 5 of the 6 will be doing robotics. But everything's done, you know, we do the vast majority of things minimally invasively. You know, we're trying to grow bigger, but we're also trying to grow safer and try to grow stronger. And so we believe the robotics platform is an important part of that. But I also think that maintaining the principles of oncology and doing complete resections safely, you know, that's where and matching people with the most appropriate treatment to their goals of care. I mean, that's really where the art and science come together.
Thanks, Dan, and we'll get back to you in a bit. Lynn, thanks for joining. So I hope your ears were burning. So I showed some of those slides you loaned me about the origins of TOP, and I actually was fortunate. I met Lynn about 20 years ago when I first came through and visited Yale, and then actually Wan Ki Hang, my mentor, who was a very strong advocate, he unfortunately passed away a few years ago, of prevention. You know, we actually met for a summit to talk about prevention efforts. So Lynn, I thought you could introduce yourself, say a few words about what you do, but there was some news within the last hour on lung cancer screening. So I did show your first slide. I didn't show the second slide. I can put it up if you want, but tell us what's so exciting. It's in the New York Times right now as we speak.
Okay, so as of 11 o'clock this morning, the United States Preventive Services Task Force revised its recommendations for lung cancer screening. So Roy, if you could put up the slide.
Okay, Paula's going to help me here.
Yeah, we're gonna go.
And so if you already showed the slide I had, you know that we've been screening on the basis of the eligibility criteria of the National Lung Screening Trial, which occurred back in 2011. Unfortunately, CMS didn't really, with the help of Polly Sather, who is the nurse coordinator for the cancer screening program, we've really taken off. And this new recommendation had been out for public comment last summer, and there was a great deal of controversy about expanding the eligibility criteria. But the bottom line is, after that period of open comment, the new recommendations are to screen people who are ages 50 to 80. So they've decreased the entry age from 55 to 50. and with at least 20 pack years of smoking. And so that was decreased from 30 to 20. And that recommendation really was based on the Nelson screening trial that was done in Europe. And this much more aligns with the eligibility for that trial, which was broader than the National Lung Screening Trial. You still have to be currently smoking or have quit within the past 15 years, which came out of the NLST. And what that means is that the number of people eligible for lung cancer screening in the US is going to double from about 8 to 9 million to 16 to 18 million people. And one of the big pushes behind the expansion of the eligibility criteria was that both NLST and the Nelson study showed that there was actually benefit for everyone, but more benefit for women and for minority groups, and for us, that's, you know, people who are African American. And there's a lot of debate still as to whether women and certain minority groups, including African Americans, are more susceptible to lung carcinogenesis from cigarette smoke. But it is clear that those groups benefit more than other groups when you screen them. And the whole point of lung cancer screening is to find people early, because early detection means better chance of cure. It also lets us have a chance to talk to those people about smoking cessation, which is a big part of the decision support visit that's mandatory before before the first initial screening study. And having had the chance to cover for Poly recently and talk to 8 people one day about tobacco cessation, and one of them quit on the basis of that, I think that that's a huge opportunity that actually will be expanded as well because of the change in the screening criteria. So we're pretty excited about that. That's going to be a huge amount of work. We have some time before CMS approves that, but CMS will approve it if USPSTF recommended it. So we're going to be gearing up.
Right. Well, isn't it all about access, Lynn? People need to have access to get this done.
Right.
And they have to have insurance or CMS coverage. So hopefully this will help with that. How have we done this past year with COVID? Have we continued to screen a lot of patients?
So everything shut down outpatient for a few months, but after that, Poly reopened screening at Yale New Haven, doing the decision support visits remotely. And so we've been meeting across the system with the screening program at Lawrence, which is very well established, run by Lou Mazzarelli. Vinnie Mays has got the program at Bridgeport up and running, and they're starting to accrue screening population, and Greenwich is still in the planning process, but has a nurse coordinator. And so I think we can standardize some things. Some of this is regional specific because of the way that the community practices, but it's been great to actually all get together and talk about what we can standardize, what our goals are, you know, to have the nurse coordinators working together. I think this is really going to accelerate things. We've been screening at Yale New Haven between 400 and 600 people a year. And we are working really hard to try to acquire or develop an Epic tracking system that will allow us to actually keep track of all these hundreds of people, actually a couple thousand at this point that we've accumulated, and we want to be sure that we follow properly.
That's great. You know, as much as we have these new targeted therapies and immunotherapies, preventing lung cancer or catching it early will help so many more people. And actually, Vinnie Mays, surgery, of course, surgery, and then chemoradiation. But first with surgery, tell us a little bit about what you do. You're at Bridgeport, and I actually saw you give an amazing screening talk a few months ago. So you're obviously doing a lot of it there.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot. You asked to talk about the 4 W's, who, what, where, and why. I'm Vinny. I'm one of the thoracic surgeons, one of 6, soon to be 7, like Dan talked about, and I'm the site director for thoracic surgery at the Bridgeport Park Avenue area. Been on the staff now for 3 years, and really appreciate the opportunity to expand. I think one of the exciting things that you talked about, Roy, was it's about being present, and that it takes a village. And I think that's one of the things that is exciting, is as we expand, at Bridgeport, it's understanding the regional differences that Dr. Tanui talked about, but also how do we continue to deliver the same standard so that the standard of care at Bridgeport at Park Avenue is exactly the same like it is within New Haven County or at York Street. And that's been a source of many discussions, and we've worked to achieve that. And that's one of the exciting things as we continue to expand. At Bridgeport, we're starting to roll out the enhanced recovery after surgery, which was started at York Street, and we're going to start rolling that out at Bridgeport here this summer. And the lung cancer screening started off with a small lung cancer steering committee about 3 years ago, and there was about 10 people that were screened, and now we're up to about 100, and there's 160 orders that are currently in place for lung cancer screening. So it's going to grow quite quickly.
Well, thanks, Vinny. And the multimodality care is so important. Justin, tell us where you are and why is multimodality care so important, and what is the importance of tumor board and all working together in this way?
Thanks for having me, Justin Blasberg, thoracic surgery. I work for Vinny and Dan, or with Vinny and Dan, and for Vinny and Dan. I've been at Greenwich since the beginning of the year, and like Vinny said, we've been working towards bringing our standard of the New Haven campus across the network, and Vinny's done a really good job doing that over the past couple of years. And my goal at Greenwich is to mirror that success on all fronts, including an ERAS protocol, developing a lung cancer screening program, bringing robust robotic surgery to Greenwich, which Greenwich already has that capability, but we'll be able to sort of bring our expertise to that campus, which is great for patients. And then also our multidisciplinary clinics, similar to what we have in the sort of the New Haven campus. There's a critical mass there of thoracic support, both Sung Lee from medical oncology, Bruce McGibbon, and others from radiation oncology, and an opportunity for us to see patients in a common space and talk about multimodal approaches to treating patients with either early stage or local regional disease. And so all of those tools are in place at Greenwich, and it's an exciting opportunity for us to treat patients there as if they were on the New Haven campus or the Bridgeport campus.
And it's amazing. We have surgeons, medical oncologists across all the campuses, and of course, radiation oncology. And when I call on our radiation oncologist, Roy Decker, and when I first got here, I used to fall asleep at tumor board and they'd say, Roy, what are you thinking? I'd go, oh boy. But fortunately, it was usually Roy Decker they were asking opinion of. So Roy, tell us a little bit about radiation oncology. What's exciting, new techniques? And I know you also have another role in clinical trials. We'll get to that later.
So I have to say first, thanks, Roy. And when Roy and I see each other in the hallway, we say, hi, Roy, and it has not stopped being funny yet. It just keeps on going. So I'm Roy Decker. I've been here many years now. There were two of us, Lynn Wilson and I, were the thoracic radiation oncologists when TOP was born. And we now have a large network of fantastic thoracic providers that serve all of our sites. And I've recently turned over the clinical leadership of thoracic radiation oncology to Henry Park, who's not able to be here today. But Henry has done really an amazing job in creating a cohesive thoracic radiation unit that can offer all of our new technology and all of our exciting treatments at all of our sites in a very uniform fashion. And so I give him a lot of credit for that. I'm very excited to work with this group, and I always have been, and it has grown so amazingly over the last decade or more that quite honestly, it's difficult to keep up with. I remember we used to have discussions about what day the thoracic clinic was, and I believe we're now a 5-day-a-week operation. So it's pretty exciting.
Roy, what are these protons I hear about, and carbon, and everyone wants the newest techniques? Are we moving towards any of those, and are they better? Do they need studies?
Yeah, so we are moving forward with a couple of new technologies. We are hoping to build or planning to build a proton center that will serve our network. It will be a smaller proton unit, but it may benefit some of our lung cancer patients. So far, trials have not shown huge benefit to protons in lung cancer, at least not for all patients, but we think there may be a subset of patients that could benefit. And this is, this is an enormous investment on the part of the hospital and several of our partners. And we're excited to watch it grow. It's probably going to be 2 years before we treat a patient. We're also exploring other new technologies like biologically guided radiation therapy that will be very useful in the treatment of patients with metastatic disease. Honestly, there's still exciting things coming from us.
Excellent. Well, let's take a little bit of a different tack. I'm going to get to everyone, but Katie Politi, one of the reasons why I think we're so strong on this lung program with spores and Stand Up for Cancer grants and more are ones that I can even count, is because Katie, you've been here over 10 years and really has formed the basis, with many other scientists, but is now our scientific director. And Katie, we've really seen the science of lung cancer grow. I know when I went into this field 25 years ago, no one wanted to work in this field, but just amazing breakthroughs. And we only have a few minutes, but what's exciting about the science and how are you working to bring the science from the lab to the clinic and in your role as the basic science leader?
Yes, thank you very much, Roy. So I'm Katie Politi. I'm a cancer biologist and have been at Yale for almost 11 years now in the Department of Pathology and in medical oncology. And my lab really focuses on understanding mechanisms of tumor initiation, progression, and the biology of lung cancer, as well as understanding sensitivity and resistance to different therapies in the disease. And I think that there are a lot of amazing things that we have seen develop over the years in lung cancer. And really here at Yale, we have amazing science that is happening in these different areas that are really making a difference in taking our findings in the lab and moving them to the clinic and then taking them into the community as well. And that goes from the identification of new targets for lung cancer therapy, whether they be targets that are inside the cell, the cancer cell, like EGF receptor, for example, and other oncogenic drivers, or KRAS, for example, in the cell, but also that are tumor cell extrinsic, so targets in the microenvironment. And you heard about this new NextCure trial, for example, from Roy, that is an example of that. We also have a lot of groundbreaking studies in modeling lung cancer, so developing new and better models to study the biology of lung cancer and to study sensitivity and resistance to therapy. And again, this goes from really developing refined genetically engineered mouse models, for example, that can be used to study, for example, the immune interactions between cancer cells and immune cells, with some of the pioneering work from various different groups here, like Nick Joshi, like Liping Chen, like Richard Flavell, and others. And also then to the development of models that can be used to really study the disease in patients, so patient-derived models, where we can really study what is happening in those human tumors and understand the biology of the disease in those contexts. And so with these different models, we can leverage them then to study mechanisms of sensitivity and of resistance to therapy, and really get to some of these very difficult issues that are being faced by patients in the clinic. And so I think that those are just some examples of areas and of things of work that is ongoing here at Yale. And I think this is a great place to really bring together this multidisciplinary research because of the really good size that we have of Yale. So at Yale, where we have a big clinical enterprise, but it's very, very connected also to the scientific enterprise. And so this is a really remarkable opportunity to bring everybody together and leverage the infrastructure that is being developed through resources like the SPORE, for example, other projects that are happening here at Yale, like the Generations Project, which is focused on germline sequencing in individuals, for example, the development of models and bringing these all together. We're going to really work hard to leverage that and bring the science to the clinic.
Thanks, Katie. It's great to have worked with you, and all of us appreciate that. But now we're going to really transform things even more. Scott, so Scott's just up from clinic. I talked about you already. Tell us about, you're here. How long are you at Yale now?
So I don't know if I'm on the screen.
You're on the
probably
screen.
better. Oh, I can't see that. I've been here longer than most of you. Lynn's been here longer, but over 15 years, and I've certainly seen dramatic change in our lung program. What's great now is that everyone's sort of come together, and then the thoracic program, I think we're a great model for other cancer groups, because we have basic scientists who are working with us, we have clinicians, we have pathologists, we have all sorts of people working on the same projects. For me, my primary responsibility is treating my patients, and we certainly have a good amount of patients. And my second responsibility is to learn from my patients and to try to understand who responds and who doesn't respond, so we can extend responses to all of our patients. And for me, I do this with all of you, and primarily with Katie Politi and I. We have a protocol where we aggressively biopsy patients, their tumors, their blood, sites of toxicity, to try to understand who's responding, why someone gets a toxicity, to improve upon what we have now. And I can tell you that we have patients from early trials who are doing incredibly well now with immunotherapies, 10 years and plus out, some you would have never heard of. So my focus right now is to understand those patients. Why does a patient who has a prognosis of 3 months live 10 years without any evidence of disease, and hopefully another 10, 20 years? Why can't we do that for all of our patients? And with the help of Katie and everyone else, we're trying to get to that.
Let me ask you, you've been here, you were recruited probably when Rick Edelson was the director.
Eddie Chu, yeah.
Eddie Chu. So tell me, how did you get that first trial with nivolumab? Was it a trial that was being run with Mario? Tell us the story. It's pretty exciting.
No, so I have, my office is in the hall with Mario Schnoll, who's really a giant when it comes to immunotherapies for cancer. And he one day just knocked on my door and said, "God, I got this trial of this drug, MDX1106. And I said, "What is it, Mario? Because we certainly need things for our patients." He said, "It's an immunotherapy." And I said, "Mario, don't you know immunotherapy doesn't work for lung cancer? We've been doing it for decades. All the trials are negative." And Mario said, just believe me, just try. This is a different type of immunotherapy. So we put a few patients on trial, and the first thing I noticed was that these patients were tolerating therapies incredibly well. Most of the patients back then were going on phase 1 trials, which are very harsh, combinations of chemotherapy and targeted therapies. But the first thing, these patients really weren't having detriment in their quality of life. And then we started seeing the responses. And that was about 10 years ago, and we still have patients from that first trial who are doing well after finishing their course of therapy over a year or two, now 8, 9 years later, without any evidence of cancer. So I attribute that to Mario, who introduced me, and then from there it was easy what we needed to do.
I still remember going to Scott's office when I was interviewing here, and you showed me some of those films. And again, they were not doing this at MD Anderson. They were not doing this at Memorial back then. Doing it here. Tumor board. Every week we have a tumor board. We probably need more of them as we expand. We look at radiology. Isabel, you have a hard job. In fact, we hit you with like 20 cases on a Friday, and you have to look at all the films on the weekend, you and your team. Tell us a little about who you are, what you do, and tell us about radiology and lung cancer.
Thank you for having me here. I'm Isabel Cordopassi. I'm the section chief of thoracic imaging here at Yale. I first started here at Yale in 2010. When working with Lee and Frank back then with Amanda and trying to do the first cases of lung cancer screening, that was challenging. So I think we have been involved in all aspects in terms of thoracic malignancies, from screening to assessment of treatment. We work closely together with Lee, with the surgeons, with Frank on the screening. We provide the reports in a way that can help the clinician with the lung RADS evaluation. We also have worked a lot on incidental findings, which was a big problem. When you first start scanning a lot of people, you see all the other things, thyroid nodule, adrenal nodule, coronary calcium, and what to do with those. So we implement that on our report to guide the referring physicians who may not know what the next step would be. We have been expanding the lung cancer screening as well, together with the expansion of clinical, to trying to reach more and more sites. Since I started here, I think we evolved a lot when MR imaging of thoracic malignancies as well. Since 2010, we have been applying more MRI for mediastinal tumors and characterizing anterior mediastinal, particularly thymoma versus thymic hyperplasia or the differentials before surgical excision, before treatment. We have recently started looking at MRI, the ability to assess post-radiation changes in lung cancer in combination with PET. So there is a lot of research going on that as well, if it can be better or complementary to PET-CT, which is hard with all the inflammation post-radiation. And the other area that radiology is always quickly evolving, we have a lot of machine learning, artificial intelligence. One of the fields that we think could be applied is that, as Scott will tell you, some patients get the immunotherapy or the therapy and they get progression on imaging, but later on you go back and it was actually pseudo progression. So we're trying to see if we can come up with machine learning a model that can analyze additional texture analysis of these cancers on that CT that our eyes cannot do. And if we can try to differentiate pseudo progression versus true progression early on therapy.
Isabel, you know, expertise in radiology across the whole network is critical. And you know, we have a tumor board every week. As I said, Rob Homer is a constant there, looking at the tissue. You know, you've been doing this since I've been here, Rob, and then we'll have Kurt Schaupler speak a little bit about more research pathology. But tell us, Rob, you know, what is your role? So do you review all the pathology before we treat, before we make a diagnosis here, even if it's from the outside?
First of all, I want to thank you for letting me talk today. That's really great. Lynn Tanui, I are the old folks. I've only been at Yale for 42 years, so not here my whole life, but so far. So the role of pathology really is sort of central to the whole process. Everything sort of narrows down through the, you know, the eyes of some histopathologist somewhere to actually make a diagnosis. So clearly I represent a lot of people behind me. It's like there's a lot of people in, not just at Yale, but at other places, cytology, other histopathologists. And so, you know, the cases that wind up in tumor board, of course, most of those go through some pathologist. I may not review all of them. Certainly any cases that are a little unusual or exceptional, I try to put my eyes on. And I know that pathology language is not something that, it's not English, right? It's sort of even for doctors, it's sort of funny language. And so there's a certain amount of interpretation that needs to go in and a little bit of spin to help explain, because some things are very straightforward and some things not so much. So, and of course, the other things we're looking forward to in terms of what's new, what we're excited about. Small cell has really kind of been sort of not much going on with it for forever. And we're kind of excited that subsets of small cell have sort of shown up. I've been involved in a little bit of that. I expect that we're going to be divvying that up into something more, hopefully more approachable. And in terms of the department, you know, we've moved, we had used a relatively small panel for most lung cancers. Now we've sort of moved to a much larger panel of genetic abnormalities that we can do on a routine basis, which is great. And with, you know, the assistance of the new chair, Lu Chen, and the hospital, we're hoping to move digital pathology into the future so we can actually do a better job of sharing images across the network. You know, moving physical pieces of glass around just seems very antiquated, and hopefully we're going to sort of move forward in that. And that's really going to, you know, that's really going to open up, you know, in the same way that Isabel talked about digital image analysis or, you know, computer assisted work for radiology. That's really the first step to start doing the same thing for pathology images, which we hope to get to at some point as well.
Yeah, thanks, Robin, for everything you do. And it's good to know every Monday morning, we might not be there, but you're there. And you know, really keeping the tumor board running, and you know, we'll do more of that. So, you know, when I came here to build a spore, it's really based on tissue. You need a strong statistician. You, of course, need the science. So I was fortunate to meet David Rim. You know, and David Rim, as you all know, is involved in all the spores here at Yale, all three. You know, they all rely on David. David's still very involved with us, but I don't, what is it, Kurt? 4 or 5 years ago, he said, I've got this guy in my lab. He's great. We've got to keep him here. We don't want him to go back to Chile, and he did it. And that's Kurt Schaupler. And Kurt's just been a wonderful collaborator scientifically and therapeutically in his lab and, you know, the cores, because you gotta collect the tissue and get it in the right place and get it from all these centers. So Kurt, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Roy. So I'm Kurt Schaupler. I'm a pathologist and immuno-oncology researcher. I joined as an assistant professor and was appointed in 2015. And we have had a very active academic program. Actually, I look up today and we have 64 publications since 2015, more than 20 trainees and a lot of grants, including a number of NIH and DoD grants. So we have been busy, but it's a great environment to be able to achieve this. The other thing we have been focusing on is trying to enhance our capacity to do sort of further molecular analysis of samples. And we have implemented a lot of technology to be able to be ahead of the game. And now we're trying with Dave Rim actually to move some of these technologies into the clinic with the goal of having diagnostics that no one else has. And that's what we're focusing on. The other aspects of my function within the TOP program has been to oversee the biospecimen repository that was, as you mentioned, initiated by Lynn Tanui years ago. And we have been able to grow it, add infrastructure, and also be able to disseminate the samples. And we have a very rich repository that I would love everyone to use at some point. And finally, the other aspect of what I've been doing is, after a lot of effort from you, Roy, Mario, Ed Gaston, Dave Rim, and also Dave Hafler, we have created a platform that we can use to be able to use some of these molecular methods in the context of clinical trials and really learn from them. And over the years, since 2015, we have actually been able to work with 7 clinical trials, 3 of which are IITs. And we have been collecting, processing, and analyzing samples in ways that very few people can in the world, hoping to have, learn from it and be able to go to the next stage. So again, it has been busy, it has been very happy, very productive, and I'm very proud of being part of this team. Thank you.
Thanks for all you've done and all the mentees. That I hope this is coming out. All the students and medical students and fellows that are working with these labs and the basic labs, the clinical labs, working between the different areas. We have a few more minutes. Vanna Dest, so operations and the clinic and the nurse practitioners. I'm sitting up here because someone's finishing up the clinic for me. We're a team. We work together, and Vanna's been a glue. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts about expanding thoracic cancer, to all the different areas with a multimodality flair, Vanna.
Sure, thanks, Roy. So I'm the senior program manager of the Smilo APPs, and I've been here at Smilo and working as a thoracic oncology APP since 2013. I do represent the patient care services on this thoracic oncology cabinet, and the goal of patient care services, which is directed by Kim Slusser, is really to advocate and to support for the growth of the Thoracic Oncology Center. And with that, we're trying to improve the system issues, workflow issues, providing the infrastructure that we need to expand and succeed, as well as continued recruitment and education. It really takes a dedicated and experienced team to deliver this expert, compassionate care to our patients. And I have to echo what everyone else has been saying. We have a very gifted team that has formed a multidisciplinary partnership. Our services include surgical oncology, radiation oncology, medical oncology, pulmonary intervention, pulmonary screening, smoking cessation. And our team is huge. I mean, as everyone has been saying, it really does take a village to make this work. It's not just one particular department or one particular specialty that makes it all happen. So our team is made up of physician and nursing leadership, our providers, both physicians and the advanced practice providers, our new patient coordinators, practice nurses, our clinical trial team, which is outstanding, our medical assistants and ambulatory care associates, and the other partners of our team, which are the infusion nurses. I mean, they're really with our patients side by side when it comes to the medical oncology patients. Pharmacy, social work, palliative care, the checkout people, the people that are doing the financials, radiology, interventional radiology, pathology, laboratory, and our clinical secretaries. I mean, we truly have a world-class team, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. I mean, I think our goal is really to bring what we have at Smilo to all the other delivery networks and to make sure that we have that one signature care for all of our patients.
Absolutely, a fully integrated team and with the best innovation of science and technology. And now, Sarah, I didn't forget you. I was saving you for last. So Sarah Goldberg is our research director. And I still remember, you're here about 8 years now, right, Sarah, or so? I still remember I was on a trip spending hours trying to recruit Sarah to get her to come. Tom Lynch and I really desperately wanted her to come from Mass General and Farber. So Sarah, tell us a little bit about, and I'd like you to introduce Kira and Jennifer too, about the lung research team and how we meet and and how we're staying on the cutting edge, and some thoughts. And then we'll open for questions.
Well, thanks, Roy. This is an amazing forum to bring everybody together and talk about our program. I'm Sarah Goldberg. I'm a medical oncologist. I've been here for almost 9 years now, Roy. And so I think you've heard from so many people in the group. We have this amazing team, and I think so much of what many of us, if not really all of us, focus on is advancing the care of patients with lung cancer. And so much of that is through clinical trials and basic and translational research that helped inform our clinical trials. And so, we've done so much over the last few years to improve the care of patients with lung cancer. Our targeted therapies have come so far. We have, so many more therapies that we can offer patients. Scott mentioned immune therapy. We're starting to understand resistance and how to overcome it. And so now it's really bringing that to the next level and advancing things even further. And so, as Roy mentioned, we have this amazing research team. We used to have 1 meeting a week, and now we have so much to discuss. I think we're up to like 2-3 meetings a week where we all get together and discuss various aspects of our clinical research program. And so huge driving forces behind that are Kira Pavlik and Jennifer Pope from the clinical trials office. And they've done so much to help us make our clinical trials a reality, open up, the best trials, I think, for our patients and keep things running smoothly. So, Roy, I'm turning it over to them to introduce themselves and tell us about what they do.
Okay, very good. Who wants to go first? Jen?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Pope. I am the clinical trials team manager for the Thoracic group, and I'm relatively new to this team, but not new to the clinical trials office. And I am looking forward to continue to work with Dr. Gettinger and work more closely with Dr. Goldberg in hoping to bring some more trials open quicker and to try to find the best trials for the patients that we have across the network. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, thanks for all you've done, and we'll continue to do. Kira.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Kira Pavlik. I've been at Yale now for 12 years this year, 8 of which have been in the clinical trials office. And I've had the pleasure of working with many of those on the panel over the last several years. I'm currently one of the assistant directors of clinical trials operations in the clinical trials office under our director, Joyce Tull. So I'm responsible for the lung melanoma, therapeutic radiology, and head and neck clinical trials disease teams from an operational and compliance standpoint. I work closely with the research team, the team leaders, managers, regulatory, our hospital partners. It really does take a village, as so many of you have already said. And I want to say too that the investment of the research team is really inspirational on this team. The lung team is fortunate to have some really incredible and veteran team members. They have 2 research nurses who are as dedicated as they come. They've been here for years. CRAs who are dedicated to doing the right thing for the patients. Jen Pope, who's new and has been an excellent addition to the team. And I just want to really take time to recognize all of their efforts, as well as our regulatory partners and our regulatory manager, Christine Lee. It really does take the hard work of everyone to make what we do possible.
Thanks, Kira. Ed Kaftan, I don't know if you want to light up your camera, but I just want to just thank you for all you do for multiple teams, but certainly the lung group and the lung spore. And if you are able, say a little bit about big data and how we're using the database at Yale.
Hi, Roy. I wasn't expecting to be on camera here. I have the sun in my eyes, and I got to get you in front of me. So Wade Schultz with the hospital has been working very hard to get his computational health platform up and running, and I think we finally have it to a point where we can start to use it with our science, with our patients. So it should be exciting. He just gave a presentation last week on the new C-Bio portal implementation that he has there. So a lot of our data will be going into that system that we can, sort of democratize our data for research purposes. So that should be good.
Great. Well, listen, we have a few questions. We're at time, but this is like having our first cabinet meeting. It's great. So I'm gonna say there are 3 great issues that we have to tackle: access, the community, and impact. Now, these are 3 things I'd love to see this team really tackle. And just in the last 3 or 4 minutes, anyone from the panel want to give me some idea or something that how are we going to do that? How are we going to get more patients treated here on protocol? How are we going to have even a bigger impact in our work? and how are we going to do COE, which is just so important. Treat the people that live in our community. Anyone want to comment on that?
I'll say in terms of clinical trials, we've done a lot of this over the last few years already, and I think it's worked incredibly well. Roy, you showed our clinical trials numbers. I think we all feel like we could do better, but I think we've been doing very well in trying to bring our trials to the community as much as possible. And a huge part of that is there's people in all of our care centers, or maybe I'll say most of our care centers, who really join in our weekly meetings, and they're part of the team. They give input onto what trials we should open and what would be good to have in the community. And I think we all make every effort to open trials and bring the protocols to the care centers whenever we can. And when that's not possible, I think having all the clinicians informed about what's available at the main campus is also really important. And we try to do that as well. So I think that brings the best care, which I think most of us agree is on a trial, to the places where the patients are being treated, and if not, bringing the patients to the trials.
Any other comments or thoughts? Vinny, you're in Bridgeport. That's an area that certainly I would hope you'd want to reach out to the community and help people to navigate and get in. How are you guys doing that?
Yeah, I think you in your introductory, you showed a picture. I think you were at a church, or you were out there, getting to know the community. And I think that's that's one of the key things is in order to improve access, you have to get out there, boots on the ground, to understand what some of the obstacles are, or what some of the knowledge deficits are. So, we've had, I've had a lot of, lunch meals that, we've been fortunate enough to get out there pre-COVID to meet people, meet different primary care doctors. I've given a couple talks. One was at the Home for the Brave, a place in Bridgeport that actually houses homeless veterans, to talk about lung cancer screening, to kind of learn, not just give a talk, but to learn about, what the access issues are to get those folks plugged into our system. Because sometimes they just don't know. There are still people in the community that think that the Yale is just down in New Haven. And it's getting out there to educate them that, we're right next door. You don't have to go far. So that's one of the methods, is boots on the ground.
Okay, any other comments? If not, I have one final question. I see Vince DeVita on the line. So we had a grand rounds 3 or 4 years ago where we talked about Hodgkin's disease and curing that. Can we cure lung cancer? What do people think? Scott?
Depends on how you define cure, but yes.
Roy Decker?
Yes, I think so.
In what way? With chemoradiation, or with the targeted therapies, the immunotherapy?
I think ultimately we're going to turn this into a chronic disease, right?
So you've all seen that over the course of your careers. What do you think, Katie, from the lab? What's the most exciting thing coming out of the lab?
Well, I think we're really seeing some drugs that are now showing efficacy on some targets that have for a long time been thought to be undruggable targets. For example, like drugs that are targeting KRAS, which accounts for quite a large subset of lung cancers. And so when we start to see things like that, so our understanding and having drugs that can target these undruggable targets, and you add on to that then other modalities of treating this disease, and then bringing it into earlier stages and screening and detection, I think we're going to see even more improvements in survival than we have seen in the past few years.
I agree. We have to end, but Vince just wrote in the chat, you already are in a few cases, which coming from him means a lot. I think that we're making a difference, but it only matters if we get access, if we screen people and we find these mutations, we figure out how to treat resistance. And then, of course, immunotherapy, and we need to personalize that. Kurt, I think some of the work you're doing, with all your quantitative immunochemistry with David and others, that perhaps can have a role there, correct?
Yeah, I think, Roy, I think that it's critical to understand the patients better. Not only have new drugs, being able to use the drugs in the right patient, and that I think is what we're achieving and expanding, and that will certainly contribute to better care.
Well, listen, it's been a great panel, and we've had our first cabinet meeting in public, and we'll do more of these. And the goal is to raise the bar for patients and do it. We have all the pieces in place at this center. We're going to do this in other disease areas too. Thank you, Kevin Vest, for all your help and inspiration, and to all the team. There are so many other people that aren't on the panel that are part of this, and we're really thankful. Thank you all, and see you next week at Grand Rounds.
Thank you.